Welcome to Conversations Beyond Borders. I'm Laura, a mindset coach and your guide through the fascinating, sometimes challenging, but always transformative world of midlife. This podcast is for women just like you, women who are growing, questioning what's next, redefining their identities, and stepping into a new chapter with courage and curiosity.
And I'm Susan. Whether it's an empty nest, a career shift, or just that feeling of what now, midlife brings many questions, but it also offers incredible opportunities for growth and discovery. We're here to explore it with real stories, expert insights, and honest conversations about what it truly means to navigate this time of life.
In each episode, we'll explore a midlife challenge, whether it's making time for ourselves, stepping into new passions, or letting go of past expectations. We're tackling it all.
And the best part, you're not alone in this. You'll hear from women on the same journey, and we'll uncover the lessons, the laughter, and the aha moments that come with embracing midlife as a fresh beginning.
So whether you're feeling stuck or inspired, unsure, or ready to leap on in, Conversations Beyond Borders is here for you. This is a safe space to dream bigger, dig deeper, and connect with women who are also ready to live boldly beyond the borders of what they once believed possible.
Take a deep breath, find a quiet moment for yourself, and tune in as we navigate midlife together, sharing honest and meaningful conversations. Hey, Laura. I have to start this week with one question.
What's that?
How did you react to listening to our first recording?
I cried.
Of course.
You know, we've been working on this, I'm going to call it our new life adventure, for over 2 years. And it was just so surreal to finally hear a completed episode. We have poured so much of ourselves into this, and I felt this overwhelming sense of pride hearing how freaking good we really sounded.
Woohoo! I agree. I had the same moment, though mine came mid-airport lounge.
Oh, share.
And let me tell you, trying not to burst into a full-blown happy dance was a challenge.
Oh, come on. I wish you would have, and I wish someone would have captured it. Can you imagine explaining to strangers why you're dancing alone in an airport? God.
Right? Like, excuse me, ma'am, are you okay? Or you're just having a life-changing moment over here?
I have to say, there were quite a few times I wanted to call it quits and walk away from the overwhelm. But I'm so glad we stuck with it, and I'm so excited to grow this adventure with you. Now, don't get me wrong, listening back to our first episode, I realized there were a few cringy moments, like that time when, for whatever reason, I chose to use the phrase, "Geez, oh, Pete."
Where the heck is that even from?
I don't even know. I mean, who even says that anymore? But you know, honestly, that's kind of part of the fun too. You know, it's real.
Sure.
You know, it's us, and we know we'll be learning and growing as we go.
I agree, but the best part, we get to bring our listeners along for the ride. We're so excited for everyone to join us on this journey, not just as listeners, but as part of the conversation. This is just the beginning, and we can't wait to see where it takes all of us.
This week, while I was researching this episode's topic, I got very excited because today we're talking about tools that will help you take these messy and confusing emotions and turn them into amazing opportunities for learning and growth. Once we can get to a place where we can detach from these emotions, we can evaluate them as signals. These signals are what's guiding us towards growth and our true selves. I learned in therapy that my anger was an indication as to where I needed to set a boundary.
Oh, that's so important. What an incredible insight.
Oh, yeah. And that realization was life-changing. Instead of remaining stuck in my cycles of anger, I was empowered to establish the boundary, ultimately creating more peace for myself and those around me. However, when we have spent most of our lives owning our negative emotions, making the shift can be challenging.
It sure can be. I agree, it's hard. But this week, we're going to explore the concept of reconnection through two principles that I think are going to really help our audience. That is through grounding and self compassion. I'm excited to examine these concepts. This discussion will guide you in identifying and changing the behaviors that will help you overcome milestones and be all ready for stage 2 next week.
And just as a quick reminder, we want to make sure you have the companion workbook. It's full of helpful resources and places for you to jot down anything that resonates with you. You will find the workbook in the Files tab in our private Facebook page. If you have not yet joined the private Facebook page, head over to our website at conversationsbeyondborders.com. Click Join Here in the pop-up. We look forward to seeing you there. I just want to start by thanking the listeners for coming back to our second episode. I hope this means there was something meaningful in our first episode. Last week, we introduced the concept of the midlife evolution, and we discussed the emotions you may experience in stage 1.
We sure did, Laura. We looked at a lot like grief, loneliness, sadness, and fear, emotions that might resonate deeply with how you're feeling as you navigate your midlife. Today's episode, we like to call From Surviving to Thriving, a foundation for self-compassion. We're shifting the focus to how recognizing and naming our emotions can actually create space for something new. When we take the time to acknowledge what we're feeling, we open the door to healing, growth, and self-compassion in ways we may not have expected.
I have to say, the title for today's episode is perfect. This episode is all about shifting your mindset to move you into a place of controlling how you navigate the season. Instead of just trudging through as a passive survivor, you'll be able to navigate it with intention.
True. We're also exploring how removing ego from our emotions helps us process them with less resistance and more clarity. So this isn't just about ignoring or dismissing what we feel, Laura.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's about recognizing our emotions without letting them take over by creating space to observe, understand, and respond rather than just reacting. Again, we open that door to growth, healing, and a deeper connection with our true selves.
Well, I'm excited about this week's episode, Susan. Should we get started?
Let's get started. This episode, Cultivating Habits, highlights how small intentional practices can help midlife women reconnect with themselves and prioritize self-compassion. Laura, our favorite Brené Brown author, would describe these habits as small but mighty acts of self-compassion. I love that. It's like dedicating 10 minutes each morning to quiet reflection or rediscovering a forgotten creative passion.
Susan, can you share a time in your life when you had to establish a habit to help keep you sane?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I kept sane, but I definitely had to find something. It was during probably the most stressful time of my life, moving from one country to another with 3 small children under 7. I desperately needed something just for me.
Of course, you would have had to have locked me up.
Yes, establishing a morning walking ritual helped me to clear my mind and refocus the day. And quite frankly, it allowed me to vent my feelings of sadness and loneliness, of missing my home and my family. I could not hide it. It was so isolating and frustrating at times, as I didn't even know where to find a pediatric doctor, a dentist for myself, or even know where the breastfeeding routine fit in.
I love that. And you didn't put pressure on yourself. It wasn't about steps or losing calories, just about giving you yourself the space.
Exactly. I needed something nurturing, unlike another to do on my list.
And that's a great point. I think many of us fall into this trap of thinking self-care has to be productive, but sometimes it's just about being present.
Laura, That's a hard memory, even when I think about it today. What kind of practices have you adopted along the way?
I came up with a practice I like to call micro moments of grounding. You know, I have a stressful day job, and there are times when the pressure is too much. At the end of a stressful day, I would find myself feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and disconnected. My life coach training taught me how grounding practices are a powerful tool to calm our nervous systems and get us back into the present.
Oh, Laura, that sounds fascinating. What is the practice?
There are a lot of different things you can do for grounding yourself, but this specific grounding technique is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. For those of you unfamiliar with it, this method involves 5 things you see, 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And you have to do that assessment from where you are in that present moment.
Wow.
So, what I decided to do is I decided to take a daily habit and turn it into a grounding practice using this method. That daily habit was washing my hands. I drink a lot, which means I pee a lot.
Yep.
So, I'm getting grounded a lot.
I love that.
So, what I did is I bought some fragrant foaming soap and I have a soft textured rug in front of my bathroom sink. When I wash my hands, I look for 5 things on my counter or look out the window in my bathroom to see what might be outside. I feel the temperature of the water, the softness of the foam of the soap, and the texture of the rug underneath my feet. I can hear the water running, the sound of the soap pump, and whatever's going on outside. I also take in the scent of the soap. Now, this practice doesn't hit all the boxes, but that's okay. It still works to ground me and bring me back into the present moment. Similar to how grounding brings us back to present, other practices like cultivating gratitude and mindfulness can also help us build resilience and emotional strength. When we look for what's good, we're training our brains to find it more easily. These habits don't have to be big or perfect. They're just about the small shifts that over time will make a huge impact. And that's where the self-compassion comes in. Just as grounding helps us return to the present moment, self-compassion allows us to meet ourselves with kindness once we get there.
Oh, Laura, thanks so much for describing that. I could feel all the senses that you were describing. It's like taking something ordinary, like washing your hands, and turning it into a mindful moment. Did it take time to make it a habit?
Oh, yeah. At first, I would rush through it as usual. There's always, an email to respond to or something that needed to be done. But once I noticed the sensations, it really became this little reset button throughout my day.
Oh, I need to try that. Though knowing me, I might start narrating it out loud and freak people out. I see 5 things. I feel the soap.
Well, I think you'll be okay as long as you don't do it in a public restroom.
I'll try to remember that. I want to mention, Laura, I could hear a level of self-compassion that you gift yourself during that grounding experience. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling anxious or frustrated or anger, you recognize those emotions as being a part of being human. Brené Brown teaches us that naming our emotions is an act of courage, but also an act of self-kindness.
I never considered that as an act of courage, but she's so right.
Yeah, when we say, this is what I'm feeling, and that's okay, we open the door to understanding rather than self-judgment. From there, we can take a deep breath and ask, how can I support myself through this? Self-compassion starts with giving yourself the same grace you'd offer a friend.
It's funny. While the family was growing and got busier, I found that self-compassion was one of those areas in my life that quietly moved to the back burner. It was so easy to dismiss my own needs when focused on saving money and time for the family, thinking that taking care of myself was a luxury there's no way we could afford.
Oh, girl, I never allowed a younger me to consider my needs at all. Massages, facials, and even spending time with friends seems selfish.
And what's funny about that, even though it feels selfish, it's actually just the opposite. The more overwhelmed we get, the more we actually need to show ourselves kindness and understanding. Self compassion isn't about taking a break or relaxing, it's about staying in tune with ourselves, honoring our feelings, and giving ourselves permission to rest. When we practice self compassion, we're able to fill up our own cups. And from that place, we have more to give to the people we love.
Oh, that's such an important distinction, Laura. For me, it started with something as simple as that morning walk. Putting one foot in front of the other became this meditative space where I could process what I was feeling and start my day with intention.
I love that, Susan. There's something powerful about carving out that space for yourself. For me, reconnecting wasn't about solitude, but it was also about rekindling friendships. After those crazy busy years of raising our kids, reconnecting with you and starting this podcast became a source of security, as our friendship was a very familiar and was always a safe space for me. Our weekly conversations reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I had someone in my corner. Rebuilding our connection felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I had lost.
Oh, man. Right back at you. I feel exactly the same. Now, not everyone needs to start a podcast.
But they should.
Yeah, but finding spaces for connection, that's a must. Whether it's through conversations, journaling, or small daily rituals, this can be transformative. Now, growth doesn't always come in big, dramatic changes. Often, it's the small, consistent habits that keep us grounded.
And grounding is so important in maintaining our emotional stability.
Yeah, let's be transparent. These changes are not easy, Laura. But with an extra dose of determination and grace, we can overcome the overwhelm, that just naturally creeps in. That voice of doubt may try to shut you down. The key is to keep going, even when it feels hard. Change is messy, but so is transformation.
Susan, you are so right. And I love how you mentioned the voice of doubt. Negative self dialogue is a challenge we all face, and it's easy to think that growth should feel smooth and effortless. But as you said, change is messy. What do they say? You have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. And the small moments of discomfort can be tough, but that's also where the magic happens.
Oh, the magic part for sure.
Take something like gratitude. It doesn't have to be complicated. Writing down 3 things you're grateful for each day may feel insignificant at first, but with time, those small acts can shift your mindset. And when we choose to focus on the positive, even when life feels overwhelming, we're training our brains to find light in the midst of the mess.
Absolutely. And another thing to remember is that hope isn't just something that appears. It's something we actively build. It starts with those small, consistent choices. I know for you, Laura, gratitude played a big role in shifting your mindset. Can you share just a little bit of how that changed your inner dialogue?
I would love to. So, I started my gratitude practice about 30 years ago. And what I found is gratitude helped me break free from the cycle of self doubt. Instead of the negative self talk taking over, it became more forgiving as I progressed through my gratitude practice. This created space for me to become more compassionate with myself. I started offering myself grace for mistakes instead of berating myself and telling myself how stupid I was for doing whatever the thing was. So I was about 90 days into this practice, and something that's pretty typical for me is I would burn the garlic bread that would go with our dinner. And every time I pulled that stupid bread out of the oven, I would say terrible things to myself. You're so stupid, you know better, you do this every time. What are you doing? You should be so distracted. But again, about 90 days into my practice, I'm pulling that freaking bread out of the oven again. And a little bit later, I was like, wait a minute. I'm not beating myself up mentally. There is obviously something to this gratitude thing. And I was sold from there that I couldn't believe that this small practice, just naming 3 things each day, helped me reframe my perspective. And this is a key to moving out of stage 1, where you feel lost and disconnected, and stepping into stage 2, where you begin to shift your mindset and challenge negative thought patterns.
Exactly. And the first milestone in that shift is recognizing where you are, naming your emotions, and deciding, I think I'm ready to take one small step forward. It's not about fixing everything overnight. It's about making one intentional choice that moves you towards change.
These small steps may feel insignificant at first, but they have the foundation for self-compassion and resilience. It's about showing up for yourself in ways that truly matter.
Yeah. And before we wrap up that first segment, we want to leave you with a question. What is one small practice you can cultivate this week? Find your workbook, take a moment to think about it, and write it down if you can.
And if you're feeling up to it, we'd love to hear from you. Share your ideas in our private Facebook group. Your step, no matter how small, has the power to create a ripple effect of inspiration and lift up someone else.
Welcome back to Conversations Beyond Borders. We're talking about milestones, those moments that show us we're growing and moving forward. Don't you think, Laura, this is such an important part of the journey because it reminds us that progress is not about having all the answers. Being part of a community like this allows us to share and recognize that we share common ground.
Absolutely, Susan. It's so easy to overlook the growth within ourselves, especially when we're always focused on the next thing we feel we need to fix or learn.
Oh, no kidding.
So, my middle son, Ryan, is so great at reminding me to pause and remember how far I've come. My day job is in the IT department of a health system, but I didn't start my career in tech. Because I didn't study computer science and I had to learn as I went, I can get very insecure about whether I truly know enough to be effective in my role.
Well, sure.
Yeah, and whenever I share those doubts with Ryan, he reminds me to take a pause and look at how far I've come and how I've been able to build a career in an industry that was once foreign to me.
No, don't deny those emotions, Laura. That is the sweetest quality for a son to care about. Your journey and to remind you, you don't have to always stay in the valleys. We get to celebrate the peaks.
He reminds me when we take the time to reflect on our successes, no matter how small they may feel, we build confidence, reinforce our progress, and remind ourselves that growth happens one step at a time.
I love that for you, Laura. For me, noticing how my emotions started to feel less tangled helped me to feel less frustrated or sad. I could name and understand what I was feeling. That gave me so much clarity and allowed me to move forward with my own intention.
That's a great point, Susan. When we start untangling our emotions, it gives us a clearer understanding of what we're feeling. One of the keys to that clarity is stepping out of ego, learning to observe your emotions without letting them define you. When we step out of ego and recognize and name our emotions, we create space for growth.
Oh, such wisdom.
Oh, it is. Eckhart Tolle. If you haven't read him, you should. Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, tells us when we detach from the ego and view emotions from a place of awareness and presence, we can process them without becoming overwhelmed by them. Instead of feeding the ego's need to hold on to negative emotions, we allow ourselves to simply experience the feeling without attaching to them. This detachment creates a space for understanding, healing, and peace.
You're right. Healing isn't just about moving on. I used to tell my kids all the time, you might just have to sit in it. Knowing and feeling your presence in this busy world is a tall order.
Oh, yes, it is.
Another essential milestone we want to identify is noticing when you start showing up differently in relationships, and not just the ones with your adult children. Maybe you're setting a boundary for the first time, or maybe you're sharing something vulnerable with someone you trust. Oh man, I remembered once I was terrified to open up to a best friend about how lonely I felt when my youngest moved out. In the past, I may have just brushed it off, pretending everything was fine. But this time, I allowed myself to be vulnerable. And to my surprise, my friend really related to what I was going through and offered incredible support. These moments, setting a boundary and allowing emotional honesty, are signs that I was stepping into a new, more self-assured version of myself.
Susan, I love how you overcame what might have felt as risky and you allowed yourself to be vulnerable with your friend. That's brave and that's growth. And that's a reason to celebrate. I think it's so important to celebrate every accomplishment, not just the big moments. Sometimes those major milestones take some time to reach. So recognizing the smaller victories along the way will give us the oomph we need to keep moving forward. So, Susan, how have you celebrated a milestone in your life?
Great question. I have been known to do the happy dance, but to do it more in a private setting to mark an achievement that no one else even knows about. We want to hear from our listeners too. In our private Facebook group, we've created a space where we can all share and celebrate these milestones together. Whether it's a small shift in perspective or a major breakthrough, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.
And if you're not sure what milestone to celebrate, start with this. Think about a moment in the past week where you felt a little more grounded, a little more open, or just a little lighter. Those are all signs of growth, and it's worth acknowledging.
We want you to know that you're not alone in this. Every small step forward, no matter how uncertain or imperfect, proves your strength and resilience.
So as you go about your week, pay attention to those moments. Write them down, celebrate them. And if you're feeling comfortable, share them with us in the community. Progress isn't about being perfect. It's just about showing up, learning, and continuing to move forward.
Yes, thank you for being part of this conversation. In our next episode, we're going to explore how to build on these milestones to create a deeper connection and purpose. We'll also dig into the emotions of stage 2, how they might be holding you back, and how to navigate them with self-compassion. Until then, take time to notice and celebrate the moments that remind you you are moving forward.
The journey may not be easy,
but we promise you,
it will be worth it.
As we wrap up today, we've explored the deep emotions tied to feeling lost and disconnected in stage 1. Together, we've uncovered how self-reflection, small daily habits, and building connections can create sparks of clarity and purpose. Remember, these shifts don't happen overnight, but each step brings you closer to rediscovering yourself. And don't forget to hit the subscribe to where you listen to our podcast.
In the next episode, we'll move into stage 2, navigating the weight of negative thought patterns. Together, we'll explore how to break free from these cycles and start nurturing your own needs. Because learning to care for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. Join us for a heartfelt conversation full of actionable tools and encouragement. Now, here is some of the legal stuff. The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We are not licensed mental health professionals, and the content of this podcast is not intended to replace care from a qualified mental health provider. If you are experiencing distress, facing challenges in your mental health, or require professional support, we strongly encourage you to seek help from a licensed healthcare professional. If you are in crisis and need immediate support, you can contact the Suicide Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988 or texting 988. Trained crisis counselors are available 24/7 to offer free and confidential support. This podcast is designed to inspire and support women navigating midlife transitions, but your journey is unique and professional guidance can make a significant difference.